about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She's the author of the book Heroin, the journey through addiction, recovery, and self discovery. No other than Miss Charles Henson.
Hey guys.
Welcome, Miss Charles, on Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I missed?
Hey there, guys. Sorry about that. I have a disruptive dog. My name
No
is,
worries.
thank you. My name is Chelzzz, at the real Chelzzz on Instagram. I am a hip hop artist, an MMA fighter, and an author. And I wrote a self help book in regards to addiction and codependency and how both realms typically cross while we are discussing other addictive behaviors. And I published that last year, and I actually just recently won an award for that book. I was named News Nation's Woman of the Year for Atlanta, and I was one of the top finalists that was flown out to Nashville last week to celebrate being a remarkable woman.
Truly remarkable. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Miss Charles. And congratulations again for being a best-selling author as well.
Thank you, Daniel.
So, no worries at all. And let's talk about the book itself. You build a career as the rapper, fearless, bold, and unapologetic. Now you're releasing a deeply vulnerable memoir under the same name. How do these expressions of Charles coexist, and do they ever feel the odds with each other?
That's actually a great question that not many people have asked me. The worlds are completely parallel. You see the typical hip hop and rap artist glorifying drug use, full on admitting that they're addicts in their music. And, not doing it in a manner where they're trying to promote recovery, doing it in a manner where they're glorifying the entire addiction process. For a while, I was actually very guilty of that myself. While I was in the trenches of my addiction, I didn't rap about things that could save people's lives. I'm changing my music up. And this is a public service announcement for everyone that does listen to my music. You guys will be hearing more stories in regards to when I was locked up, when I found out that I was an addict. I'm really shedding the light on this issue as a whole. I don't know how the community will either embrace it or not, but I really don't care. And for the first time ever, I'm doing this for me rather than for everyone else, and it feels really good. There's something really powerful being able to turn your pain into a testimony, and that's what I'm trying to do here.
Powerful indeed, and we salute you for doing that. Miss Charles, you describe your pivot to writing as a God's plan, something you never expected. Was there a specific moment in your recovery when you realized that this story needed to be told as a book, not just a music?
Absolutely. um the music just gives people a glimpse of certain moments, but no one knew the real me. Um, and Chells is my stage name, but no one actually got to know Chelsea, who I truly am. And I let people in an unapologetic way that probably didn't depict me in the best light, but that's okay. Other people are struggling with these same sort of issues. And when I walked into these rooms and I saw, the AA, the NA, the people that are just habitually going in and out, it's what I noticed when I was there. People were not willing to dive deep inside of themselves to pick apart the problems and the reasons why they started using in the first place, but also, taking responsibility over your stuff and giving the other people responsibility where they may have offended you or crossed boundaries that you had tried to establish but couldn't voice. And those memories are very important. It's not to bring up the trauma or to have you relive the past. It's because everyone that I know that's addicted to something has relived this past on a day-to-day basis, and they keep themselves in this hold and this grasp of shame and this cycle that is repetitive because they're so ashamed of their own behaviors. And I think that that shame really needs to be addressed. We live in this shame when we can step out of it and live in light, knowing what we've done, learning from those mistakes, and realizing that those aren't a part of our character. That was something that we did, but that's not who we actually are. And I think that that's very important for an addict to know, because I know all of us that have struggled with any addiction has felt like we've made a lot of mistakes.
Very well said, Miss Charles. Your upcoming album, Relocated, is about reinvention and resilience, while your book, Heroin, explores addiction and recovery. Are these two projects speaking to each other? Will fans hear echoes of your recovery journey in the music?
That's a great question, Daniel, and I appreciate you asking me that. Again, not something that a lot of people ask. Um, the stories are completely parallel. The stories that you read in my book, the different fragments of this broken life that have been rebuilt, have all come together with this music. For the first time, I'm able to use this shame in a way that I can unapologetically, once again, tell my story through music, because not everyone likes to read, but maybe there's a certain verse or a certain bar in these songs that will resonate with you, that show you there's hope on the other side of this thing. The music Relocated is all about removing myself from a toxic situation, from toxic people, from toxic areas, and redefining and relocating myself not only in a new geographical area, but with a brand new mindset. And you don't actually have to pick up, pack up, and relocate to relocate your mind. And I want people to realize that, it's not about walking away from this, that, and the other. It's about stepping into your truth. And this whole album that will be released in October is the truth, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And everything that I did up until the point where I realized I needed to stop. And that story needed to be told. It needed to be told.
And thank you for sharing to the world, Miss Charles. You've gone from performing for audience of up to 16,000 people to sitting alone writing a memoir. What was harder, bearing your soul on stage or bearing your soul on the page?
I love that. Um, both of them pose their difficulties. Honestly, when I was performing in front of so many people like that, I was always drunk or high. And so those moments at the time weren't scary. Now, even walking into a room with 15 people is terrifying, because I don't have the false sense of ego and the false sense of confidence. Writing this and coming to terms with who I was and seeing what I could change about myself in silence. Um, it may have looked like a one man show, one man process, but this took a lot of codependency group therapies, a lot of therapists, a lot of psychiatrists. They were all hands on. So, although you may not see those individuals, right on the forefront of my book or my social medias, those individuals have been pertinent in every step of the way to make this easier to do than it actually appears. So neither one of those things are easy, to be honest. They take a lot of confidence, a lot of charisma, and a lot of guts. Um, I think telling my story behind a computer was safe at first, but then when I had to start speaking about it, on podcasts and things of that nature, I had to get comfortable talking about myself to an audience. Again, neither one of those things are easy, but I think that there's been more freedom in this process, just being honest with people and just being able to share this story, whether it be publicly or whether it be on a one-on-one consultation with a sponsee that I have. Um, Music is amazing, and performing in front of that many people is a high in itself. It's an adrenaline rush, a dopamine rush. It does so much for me and for my soul, but this has done so much for other people. And I think really what matters is what makes the biggest impact. And I don't know what that might be. It's the fan's choice. None are easy, neither is easy. But at the end of the day, both are equally rewarding.
Beautifully articulated. Ms. Charles, you've spoken openly about being in jail after a drug induced domestic dispute with your wife. In that cell, you say God taught you and showed you were living your purpose. Walk us through the moment. That did the voice feel like? And how did you know what is real?
Well, unfortunately, I it was not my first trip to jail. I've done time before. It wasn't for abusing my spouse, but it was for selling drugs, using drugs, fraud charges. I mean, you name it, pretty much I have it on my record. This time around, it's different because this woman that I was with required me to be a different person than what I was willing to be. And for a long time, she held on and she gripped on because she knew that I could be different before I even knew I could be different. And her walking away from me while I was incarcerated was the best thing that anyone could have ever did for me. Because at the end of the day, feeling 100% alone meant all I had was myself. And that meant that only I could do the work to fix this. Now, waking up in Broward County Jail was a complete blur, and some of the weeks afterwards were pretty fuzzy and blurry as well. I had attempted to take my life the night before, and I had taken as many Xanax as I could get my hands on, which was quite a few. Um, you know, that realization that this is an inside job. I do have people in my corner, but ultimately I need to do this myself. um, and having the most important person in my life walk away when she absolutely should have, it held me to a different standard that no one in my life has ever held me to before. um, because I was doing so good outwardly with the music and with my job and with the companies, like everyone everyone thought it was okay for me to behave the way I was behaving. And I was never held to a higher standard until Allison came into my life and walked away. I needed her to walk away. I needed to be locked up and held accountable for what I did so that I could continue to walk a walk of accountability and remain humble and know where I could end up at any given point if I continued to live the life that I was living at that time.
You described seeing other addicts in jail and being scared straight. Was there one face, one person, or one moment in jail that become the mirror you could not look away from?
Wow, absolutely. Now, this is how far addiction can go. Um, because of the fact that I attempted my own life, I was put in the psychiatric observation ward of the jail. And there were some other people there that had severe mental health disorders, severe mental health issues. Um, and for me to see that, I realized, with that brain fog that I had described earlier, I was terrified that that was going to be me, that I, even if I stopped now, that like I was so crazy, that something was so wrong with me in my mind that I was going to be one of those women. Um, there was one woman in particularly, she was completely nude and locked in a cell that couldn't, she couldn't touch anyone, she couldn't come to or speak with anyone, but her psyche prevented her from being able to anyways. This woman couldn't communicate. She would screech and slam her body at the wall and randomly start singing and touching her legs, and then wanted, all of a sudden she saw me and just was screaming that she was going to kill me. And this this isn't jail for everyone, but this was jail for me. And it it didn't terrify me to the fact that I thought, oh, maybe she could break out of here and actually hurt me. um, I thought the damage had already been done. I thought, because I was in a room full of these other women and I was comparing myself to them, I was truly terrified that that insanity and that depth of insanity was going to be my permanent reality.
You wrote that addiction was burning the candle at both ends, isolating you and destroying everything you held dear. What is the last thing you lost, or the thing you almost lost that became the final straw?
You know, um, Honestly, I've given up so much and I've gotten it back because of hard work and resilience. What I have not gotten back were the people that I've lost. Um, my aunt passed away due to alcoholism. I lost a 32-year-old cousin 3 years ago. She died on the day room floor of a rehab center, detoxing off alcohol. My father had gotten sick. He developed a lung disease. No one knew why, but we're all about 90% sure that it happened due to his using. My mom got cancer. No one knew where that came from. She had liver failure that turned into pancreatic cancer. It spread everywhere. So I've lost so many important individuals through addiction, because of this disease in one way or another. If they didn't just flat out OD, I saw them suffer and struggle for years with their disease and ultimately with the illnesses that those brought on. Um, so, everything I've lost, I'm still here. I can get everything back, but I can't get that time back and I can't get those people back.
After jail, you immediately go back into therapy, AA, NA, and codependency groups. What made this time different from previous attempt to get clean? What clicked that had not clicked before?
You know, every time I've done this, I've had reservations. I entered this program while I was still in high school. I actually graduated high school from a halfway house. I didn't take it seriously because of how young I was. And then when I did kind of start, saying, all right, I need to take a break. That this is enough. I got rid of all of the hard drugs, but I didn't stop the narcotics use in full. I continued to drink. I continued to take Xanax. I continued to take Adderall. Um, and ultimately, all of those behaviors led me down this path of smoking crack for almost 18 months. I was so desperate. I had no one. I had already lost my mom. My dad was sick. My fiance left. I had no one except myself. No one except myself to blame, but no one except myself to pick myself up, take responsibility for what I did, and change it, and hope that I would have some of these people back in my life again if I got my life straight. And if not, God would bless me with new people in my life that would help me during this process. Um, Again, I think Allison leaving really was a turning point in me realizing, I'm operating like a complete monster. Um, and this type of behavior just festers if I leave it unchecked. So I was so desperate. I hated who I was. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. I weighed 90 pounds. I was an egotistical maniac with zero self esteem. Um, I couldn't stand to look at myself anymore.
The book's central thesis is groundbreaking. That addiction is only symptom of the real issue, codependency. Can you explain the disconnection for someone who has never heard it framed this way before, Miss Chelsea?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, Codependency is not your fault, first of all. Neither is addiction. There are many different reasons and factors on why people feel the need to pick up in the first place. I wish that codependency literacy or literature, excuse me, was more widely available because this is a problem that not only people from addictive backgrounds, people with addiction in their families, this is not a one size type of fits all situation. I mean, everyone that I've ever met has been codependent in one way or another. And that's because when we're young, before we have a voice and before we have a choice, things are mirrored to us, behavior patterns that we pick up. And we tend to think that those patterns are a part of what defines our character. Those patterns are what we learned. And what we need to do is unlearn those in order to step through the shattered pieces and put things back together. And okay, you could put down the drugs, you could put down the alcohol. But if you're not picking something up and working on yourself, then you're going to have a miserable time being clean. I mean, that's what the term dry drunk is usually referring to. Someone who just put down the substance, but the exact same person is still looking back at you in the mirror. And that's why a lot of these people continue to go in and out of the program and pick back up. Um, I don't think people necessarily want to take a deep dive in their life, in their psyche, in their being, to see why they chose to recreate these patterns in different ways. But the only way to break the cycle is by finding out where it started in the first place. You know, it's no different than a sickness. When someone has cancer, you don't just treat the entire body, you treat that one area that needs to be treated. And if it spreads, you treat the other areas accordingly. This was the core issue. You aren't an addict because you choose to smoke crack. Why are you an addict? It's because something happened to you at a young age where you felt like you had no control. So you tried to grasp onto control in other ways. And really being an addict is controlling your own narrative. Because if I set the bar up here, you guys are all going to want to see me reach that. But if I set it down here, then you guys are not going to expect anything from me. And that's how I lived my life for so long. And codependency looks different on everyone. Absolutely different. It is not a blanket accident forgiveness plan that is available for anyone and everyone. Everyone's recovery process is going to look a little bit different. But just realize that, like, you have an inner child. And somewhere along the lines, that inner child was abused and damaged. And that contributed to your feelings and the way you operate in your adulthood. And this goes for people with and without addictions. If anyone was ever hurt or wronged, they should seriously look into some codependency therapy, whether it be my book, a therapist, or another guideline like PM Melody or Melody Beatty. Um, Codependency is not just for an addict, but I do see it more than anything in addicts that are still suffering. That's why we do the step work. And the step work is just a little tidbit of what you're actually going to get out of the program if you take a look into this codependent side and you're willing to come to terms with that, own it, and relinquish that as your identity because only you have the opportunity to change this for yourself.
Beautiful articulated, Miss Chelsea. You've been an advocate for LGBTQ representation in hip hop. Speaking about how Miami opened doors for you as a gay woman, how does your identity as a lesbian inform your recovery journey and your message to the other LGBTQ individuals struggling with addictions?
So, I mean, I think it's really important to find your safe space. There are so many people, and it really, I mean, location is a big part of it. When I lived in Michigan, when I lived in Miami, I was very openly accepted for being gay. Georgia's a little different. We're in the South. If you're in Atlanta, then you probably haven't felt that as much as if you're in rural Georgia. But it really does depend on the area. And I think it's so pertinent that the LGBTQ community does know, my nonprofit has space for you. If you're looking for a safe space, whether it be online meetings because you don't feel comfortable walking into these rooms based on your location, whether it just be one-on-one type of consultations, therapy, things of that nature, my nonprofit really, really touches on the LGBTQ portion of things. We have multiple different gay and lesbian directors that are here to help. And I do realize that um, that is that is kind of considered being a minority. And I can definitely relate to feelings of I don't belong here. Addicts are already tricking themselves out of why they don't belong in these rooms in the first place, disqualifying themselves, saying, oh, my life wasn't this bad or my life wasn't that bad. Being gay didn't disqualify you from using drugs. Being gay does not disqualify you from recovering from your drug use either. If you're using that as an excuse, it's 2026, you're gay. I mean, like, so am I. We can still recover together and we can still recover out loud. There is nothing wrong with being gay, of course. That is not a lifestyle choice that we all chose, obviously. So, if you're using that as a reason to disqualify yourself, I would say that you're probably thinking for other things to disqualify yourself because you may not feel like you're ready. But again, being an LGBTQ member did not disqualify you from using drugs. So it does not disqualify you from getting help.
Empowering answer, Miss Chelsea. You've created a back platform in your book for readers to connect in a safe space. What does community look like, and why was it essential to you that readers not feel alone in this process?
I think, with a book like this, it's very important to keep an open forum for people to discuss their struggles, discuss their wins, whether how minor those wins may seem to be. If you just didn't use for an hour, I want to hear about it. It's very pertinent because for me, I plastered myself all over social media. Um, and I've had help. I've had these fans because of my hip hop music and because of my MMA and everything else, all of the things that I brought to the table while I was using drugs. Now, some of those people have left, and by all means, please, bye bye. I don't need people that don't support the real me and what I'm trying to do with my life. But I did have support. A lot of those individuals, they reached out to me, they cheered me on, they still do. I have people, I just want to name one fan right now, Jody Miller. She comes to my head first and foremost, and I know that she'd be okay with me naming her name. She sent me a gift last week. She sent me a gift on my 2 years, 8 months sober anniversary. I mean, it's fans like that, like family, like I think it's so incredible, um, blending these worlds together and seeing how many people actually needed help. You know, up until this point, a lot of people wouldn't feel comfortable reaching out because they saw what I was doing. And, you know, I probably was justifying why they were behaving the way they were behaving. I've had so many fans come out of the woodworks and tell me how much this has blessed them and helped them. And that has felt more compelling, more important, and given me and derived more joy in my life than anyone ever telling me, hey, I like your music.
Well said, Miss Chelsea. So, to wrap up our discussion for today, you've done a complete 360 in life. As you put it, if we could sit across from a woman in a jail cell, the one before the transformation, and whisper one sentence in her ear, what would that sentence be?
Don't stop before the miracle happens.
Mm, definitely. Don't stop. Definitely. So, Miss Chelsea, can you please invite our listeners to support your book itself?
Absolutely, guys. So you can find heroin, Heroin, crossed out, Heroine. So that
Yes.
is on Amazon. Just, you know, take a quick look for that. I will be doing a flash sale for an hour after this is posted. So Daniel will be letting you guys know where you guys can all get it on sale. Also, you can follow my journey on social media at the real Real, Chells, Chelzzz.
Yes, definitely. How about your community, Miss Charles? Would you like
Um,
to
You
plug it?
guys can all follow me on Facebook on the Heroin Facebook page or for my nonprofits page, Race Towards Recovery. I would love to hear your feedback. And if you know anyone that is in need of treatment or aftercare, please reach out to me because that's what my nonprofit is all about.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Chelsea on her book because for sure lots of people will be empowered. So, Miss Charles, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. You have a blessed day.
Likewise, Martica people, see you soon.